Alrighty, Aphrodite, welcome back to your Insurance Corner. This is your Insurance Corner. My name is Bill Miksch. I am president of WDMA Financial Group in Grayslake, Illinois, where we protect your life, we protect your health, we preserve your wealth, and we guarantee an income for the rest of your life. And I couldn't say it if it weren't true. That's what we do. And this program is strictly designed for educational purposes. We started this thing almost 5 years ago, Sean Hauser and I, with the idea of the stuff that I do and people like me do is not taught in schools, or very, very limited access to this, unless maybe you go to law school or something. And even then, the experience and the complexity of what we talk about here can be easily understood if you're working with an advisor who knows what they're doing. And if they don't, but they're trusted and they can, they're resourceful, then maybe it's not their space, but they've got people that they know that they can introduce you to. So that's what we do. We basically protect your risk, talk about the risk, talk about what you need to do to protect what you've earned, protect what you've made, protect your family, protect your health, etc. We are your defense. If you want a 20% rate of return, I'm not your guy. It's not complicated. But that being said, my apologies for getting the late notice out. We had a very busy afternoon with several Medicare and health insurance clients needing some assistance. So we are going to move on to the show proper. But before I do, introducing the man hidden somewhere in the bunkers of Dayton, Ohio, a former collegiate standout at what college, Sean? Wright State?
Wright State University.
Wright State. The man, the legend, and the way of life, and the second half of K2, Sean Hauser.
Hey, Bill. How you doing tonight?
Just ducky, Sean. It's been a day.
All right. Well, let's get our financial brains on tonight.
Yes, sir.
This topic is what I'm going to talk about like I'm an expert. But some of the things on the list, on the email you listed, I don't have those done. Yep. So.
Well, for what it's worth, the number of clients that I see, Sean, I would tell you 95%. I've never done a statistical how many people have these things, but virtually everybody is not either not started, or they thought about it, or they've started something, but they're not quite sure. Maybe there's some issues as to how to handle some things, and they're having difficulty talking about it, because this is not easy to talk about. And what we're talking about, folks, is the topic tonight, if you didn't get the email, is the basics of estate planning. And when I say that, the idea of estate planning, a lot of people think right away, well, that's just for rich people. Oh, no, contraire. If you have more than $50,000 in assets in most states, you be going to probate. Not complicated. And even if you didn't have anything, let's say you didn't own anything except maybe a car and a small little bank account, you still have some duties and some things to take care of. Otherwise, the state will step in and other people will step in and make decisions on your behalf, and it may not be what you want to have happen. And I've got more than my fair share of horror stories that I can tell you that are real life about stuff like this. The most recent ones, Sean, that you can appreciate are Prince, I think, died without a will.
Oh, yep.
Right? Aretha Franklin died without a will. For those of you that are football and history buffs, Joe Robbie, who owned the Miami Dolphins, and the stadium was named the Joe Robbie Stadium, died without a will. Laurel of Laurel and Hardy the comedians died without a will. The one that kills me the most, though, Sean, is Warren Burger. You know who he is?
That's a shocker. Yeah, the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court.
To this day, when I read...
He's a lawyer. I know he does.
Yeah. The guy was the head of the Supreme Court. He's got clerks all over the place. All he had to do was say, hey, Sean, write me up something. This is what I want to have happen. But the side story to him was that he hated attorneys.
Wow.
So, yeah, go figure. He's the Chief Justice of the highest court in the land. And you know, going into his court, he already hates you before you even start. So, and he's won. So, you know, and there are other people that, and this just happened. I was talking to somebody about making introductions for me, right? And his first words were, "I'm sure they're taken care of." And that's because people think that the wealthiest of our population are in fact taken care of. And that is so far from the truth, it's not even funny. Most people are not. And it's because it's not their fault necessarily. They've got advisors around them who are prodding and pushing them, but they're in their business, or they're working on their business or in their business, and they don't have the time to sit down and admit their mortality, because at the end of the day, that's what you're doing. You're sitting down with whomever you're going to sit down with, and you're saying, yep, I'm about to take a dirt nap, and here we go. So
I hope they don't say that, but yeah, probably not too far from the truth.
Yep. So the reality is, most people are not prepared. And even if they think they are, good advisors are, if they're given permission to go down this path, because right away, if you start prodding, you're going to get a defensive mechanism. Oh, well, we already did this. We already did that. And good advisors are going to prod just a little bit to see where they're at. And you've got to know the right questions to ask. And there was a little thing I was reading the other day about the C-suite class, so to speak. And the idea behind those people, they're very fast-moving. They're type A personalities, a lot of them, so they don't want to spend a lot of time in the weeds. If they have a problem and you are a trusted person, either through a referral or as they get to know you, they see that, you know, you're not there just to grab $1 and leave. They have a problem to solve. They may or may not vet you, but most of the time they're not going to, according to the article. If they have a problem and you can fix it and they trust you, you win. But you have to be able to, as an advisor, walk down those rat holes and find out what problems, what holes they have, what's their concern, what's their biggest, if something happened, let's say, Sean, something happened to you tomorrow, what's your biggest concern that you want to make sure is done, that Kelly's okay?
Make sure that she can access the money I leave behind, and that she can continue to stay in her house.
Right. And then there's questions after that goes along with, what mechanisms do you have in place to make sure that happens?
I told a guy.
You told a guy. Yeah, I have a guy.
Well, you know what's funny is I used to handle retirement plans, and we had a designation of beneficiary as part of the contract.
Mm-hmm.
And they would say, per instructions to X. Well, that doesn't hold up.
Right. And saying, and I see this on TV commercials when they're talking about these online estate planning things, which have their place. I'm not going to poo-poo them per se, but they don't necessarily, what's the word I'm looking for? Replace a trusted advisor, a human being who actually knows what they're doing. There's good lawyers out there, and there's not so good lawyers, and there's good advisors out there and not so good advisors. So you have to be, kind of, as a consumer, you have to have your radar on. Ask a lot of questions. Don't be afraid to ask tough questions of a person that you're going to entrust your investments, your estate, your insurance, or all of the above. Because at the end of the day, it's your life, it's your family, it's your situation. It's not theirs. They may care for you, but that doesn't substitute for the fact that they aren't you. So you have to be paying attention to those kind of things. So, and this kind of stuff, folks, they don't teach in school. They barely teach investments, frankly. And I was talking to somebody yesterday, Sean, about the fact that honestly, they should start teaching insurance and investments kind of concepts, even in the basic scenario, in the 6th grade. They should start there. So by the time they get to high school, they have a clue as to what's going on.
No, you're absolutely right, because when I went through high school, I took a class called General Business, and I believe it was 8th grade or 9th grade. No, it was 7th grade because it was at the other school. But anyway, 8th grade. Got it. So, and you went in and you learned about things like writing checks and what a savings account was and things like that. And for a kid back in the 80s, that was probably enough.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have kids that are influencers, and they have income from creative items and things like that. I mean, those are probably the exceptions, but kids these days are a lot more sophisticated than you and I were, say, when we were 13 and 14 years old. Maybe we had a paper route or maybe we cut some grass, but that was about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and to the extent that, you and I learned how to write checks back in home ec class or business 101 class and in a high school class or an 8th grade class or something. Anybody write checks these days? Yeah, on a regular basis, especially the millennials or the Y millenniums or the Z class people. No, that's
anybody whose knees don't hurt when they get up in the morning. Is that what you're going?
Yeah,
for?
Right. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, part of what we do in my business, yeah, we write checks all the time.
Yep.
But and this is a bit of digression, but it makes the point. I had one of my kids try to fill out an envelope one time. He had no idea where to put the stamp, where to put the return address, where to put the address where it was going. He had no idea.
Well, the thing is, Bill, though, is because now you send an email, or maybe if you were savvy when you were their age, you'd send a fax. Okay, but you tell somebody today, well, can I fax this to you? When you hear somebody ask you, hey, can you get this document via fax?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't know where to get a fax machine anymore.
I have one. It's not been plugged in since I moved to my office. And it was because my IT guy said, you're better off going email to fax or fax to email.
Yeah.
And while that may be true, the fax machine worked because it told me it made it. I'm not always sure when I send an email or a fax through an email that it actually got to where it went. Or where I was sending it to. But I digress. Tonight, folks, we're going to talk about the basics of estate planning. And again, you don't have to be rich to have to plan for your estate. We're all going to meet our maker someday. That is a fact. What did they say? Well, the only thing guaranteed are death and taxes. Unless you live off the grid, then maybe you can get away with no tax. But you're definitely going to pass. And so what happens? And let's say you don't pass. So the first thing that I want to chat about, Sean, is powers of attorney for property and powers of attorney for health care. A power of attorney for property basically says, in the event of my incapacity, I'm identifying Sean or my wife Sally or one of my boys or an aunt or an uncle to step in and speak on my behalf. And when we talk about property, it's not just about your house. It's about anything that you're attached to, your car, your bills, your cell phone, your bank account, your investments. As an example, I like to use this one all the time. Sean, who owns the cell phone in your house, you or Kelly?
I do.
You do. Is she anywhere near the coexistence of that phone, or do you own it straight away?
What do you mean?
Are you the only one on the account, or does she have access to it?
Oh, I think I'm the only one on the account.
So if something happens to you and she goes to call Verizon, I don't know what cell phone service, doesn't matter. Let's say they call Verizon, they're not going to talk to her without you providing permission to speak on your behalf. The first thing they're going to ask, is Sean there? No, he's kind of got tubes all over him. Oh, well, I'm sorry, but we can't talk to you. And this is HIPAA on steroids. HIPAA's gone stupidville in a lot of this space. Again, I'm going to digress here, but I remember my sister telling me one time she wanted to go to Walmart to pay a bill on my dad's behalf, and they wouldn't let her pay the bill.
That's happened to a friend of mine. Yeah, he same deal. His wife had a stroke, and he had the money and wanted to go and hand him the coupon and hand him the cash, and they said, "You're not her."
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have never been so lucky as to have somebody fraudulently pay one of my bills.
Right.
But and you know, you can make all your jokes about the person, but I said, you know what? Do you have a checking account? I said, yeah. I said, put the money in the bank, deposit that in the bank, write a check. They'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah, but they may not take it in person. Just put it in the mail, they will take the check.
You're right. No, if you you can't give them a check in person. They won't take that either.
Right.
But if you send it into their P.O. box,
oh right,
they'll take that check.
Absolutely, they won't take it from you in person, but they'll accept it in the mail. Go figure.
They'll take a check from Bernie Madoff. I mean, that's how silly it is.
It's just, like I said, it's HIPAA gone stupidville. So, yeah. But powers of attorney for property is broadly speaking anything that you have an attachment to. And folks, I'm here to tell you, your 18-year-old kids, and I've talked to my kids about this, none of them have done it yet, because their attitude is, well, nothing's going to happen, Dad. Well, famous last words until you're in a car accident. You can't think on your own. They need to have powers of attorney. Doesn't cost that much. You can do these things very simply on the internet. You don't need a lawyer to do these. If you did get a lawyer, it's probably $150 tops for the power of attorney for property, and the one for healthcare, because there's a separate one for healthcare. And it does the same thing, except this time you are stepping in front of the patient, if you will, let's say it's me. I can't speak on my own. So Sally would be my power of attorney for healthcare, and she would step in and make decisions on my behalf. And hopefully we've had enough discussion about it to say, you know, if something happens and I'm not going to have a life, unplug me. I don't want to be a burden to people, and I don't want to be carrying on and drooling all over myself for the rest of my life and not knowing who the heck I am or who you guys are. So the power of attorney for property and a power of attorney for healthcare can be the same person, or it can be different people. A couple other things about this. You should have a successor trustee as a part of that POA, because if something happens to your original trustee of the power of attorney, you need to have somebody in a backup position to take the place of the person who's supposed to do it. The other thing about powers of attorney is do not surprise that person with an oh by the way clause when something happens, where you drop the POA documents on their lap while I've got all kinds of hooks and medical paraphernalia running through my body, and I can't respond to anything. That is the wrong time to do it, because they can say no. So make sure you grease the skids and tell the person that you want to assign as power of attorney for either property and or health care. Make sure they know what the rules are. Make sure they know that they've been assigned, or you want them to be power of attorney for those kinds of things, and let them make the decision. Yes, I want to do this. No, I don't. They should be asking what's involved. What's involved? What do I have to do? Power of attorney might mean, for healthcare, might mean you got to unplug me. That's what that might mean. Are you prepared to do that? Well, only in counsel with your children. Like, okay, that's cool. I understand that. But the professionals who have to deal with you are not going to deal with multiple entities. They want one person to talk to, kind of like the manager of a baseball team or the captain of a soccer team, where the guy has a patch on his arm that says captain on it. The referee is only going to talk to him, not the other people, because they don't need a swarm or tsunami of people coming in and yelling different things at different times. They don't want one person. So whether you have a child who's 18 or more, or you're an adult, you should have a power of attorney and at least one successor trustee, if not a third one, just in case. But keep in mind, there's only one at a time. So any comments about that, Sean?
Of course. So when you have a trustee or a backup trustee, if there are other people that could be eligible to do those jobs, I would also recommend that you make your decision known, right? Mm-hmm. And kind of have that discussion, because if someone, say, has 8 or 9 siblings, and you make one person the trustee, and then you pick somebody out of the middle of the line, there's an awful lot of questions about, well, why did they choose them?
Yes.
And then the person's wish is their own, because they're the grantor of that trust. But the thing is it creates, let's say, discourse within the family, because, well, you should have picked me. I was the oldest son. Why did you pick them? Mm-hmm. Why did you pick the middle daughter and not the youngest of the family? And then it starts all this kind of internal drama. So that has nothing to do with the legality of anything. It's just one of those things that when money shows up, families get funky.
Oh, yeah.
Put it that way.
Oh, yeah. I'm a living proof of that, Sean. I have 2 siblings that have disappeared after my father passed away because they got their shorts in a knot about how my dad wanted to handle things, and he was very upfront about so-and-so was going to handle it. That was it. That was his decision. And those 2 people did not like it, and they tried to stick their nose in, and in a couple cases, one of the spouses tried to stick their nose in there, thinking he could stick his nose into the inner circle, which is, at least in our family, that's a major no-no.
Mm-hmm. I'm watching this unfold now.
Yeah.
And exactly what you described is the siblings are supposedly working together to settle everything amicably. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, you get this. Soap operas were written about stuff like this. Yeah.
I mean, you can write there. You could easily have a soap opera drama on Netflix on stuff like this easily, because of the insanity that goes on. But if you don't have powers of attorney, folks, let me tell you what happens. So let's say one of my children are hurt, and they didn't take Dad's advice, and they're doing what they didn't do what they needed to do. And my wife and I show up at the hospital, and they can't respond, and we say, we're so-and-so's parents, and let's just assume for the moment he has a girlfriend or they have a boyfriend, but they're not married. if a fight begins to ensue and we, the parents, trump the girlfriend or boyfriend unless we've been told otherwise, and there's a fight that ensues, the professionals will say, you know what, no power of attorney, we're not talking to anybody. We'll see you in court. And then we're going to make you, the patient now has to be made a ward of the state, and then the judge is going to assign somebody, and it might be a family member or it might not be, depending on the discourse that's going on. So, as I like to say, third parties will end up making decisions that nobody is going to like. In particular, the person who's sitting there who can't respond because they're in a coma or they're out of it. So this is of the planning pieces, folks. This is the one that's probably the most important, because people will get sick or hurt before they die. Die is a finality unless you get a mulligan and they let you come back. But the powers of attorney are hugely important. The next piece after that is beneficiary, proper beneficiary designations. This is a huge deal, folks. If you work for a company and they have life insurance for you, as God is my witness, I tell people all the time, make sure you put a primary and a secondary in there. And I'll give you an example of this true story. When I first started in the industry back in the day, there was a person who had assigned the boyfriend to the beneficiary.
Oh, I know where this is going. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, the boyfriend and the girlfriend, actually it was the other way around. They signed the girlfriend. He died 3 years later, and he was married at that point, but not to the girl he put on the primary beneficiary. So the old girlfriend was the primary beneficiary. And in the group world, folks, the insurance company does not hold the beneficiary. They call the employer, who's on record, as the primary. Paper comes through. It says Janie, the girlfriend, and the wife is getting her hand out with tears running down her eyes going, where's mine? And they're going to go, sorry, Mrs., but he didn't ever put you into the primary position. And I thought I was going down with the ship. I thought the employer was going to be in trouble. Nope. Folks, that is your responsibility to make sure the beneficiary designations are up to speed. You could change them every day if you want, drive the HR department nuts, but you can change them at will. But if you don't have one, or you only have a primary and not a secondary, Sean, do you know what happens if you don't have a beneficiary designation?
It goes into the estate, right?
Yep. And even if there's a will, do you know where it ends up going?
It goes to probate, and then that's when all of the ghouls and the vampires come out.
Absolutely. Your life insurance policy that would have otherwise been distributed income tax free to your beneficiaries now goes through probate, and the very person you wanted to avoid, which is the attorney, is going cha-ching, thank you very much, 20%. You'll get the leftovers, and oh, by the way, now it's taxable because it went through probate first. So with that said, Sean, I think we're at the bottom of the hour already. That was a fast half hour. We didn't even talk about sports or anything.
This is a good topic to talk about because there are so many moving parts.
Well, we got more moving parts to talk about. That's Sean Hauser. My name is Bill Miksch. This is Your Insurance Corner at 101.5 FM, WLCB Slade's Corner, Wisconsin. We'll be right back after these short messages.